Hi there. Welcome to the September the 19th episode of Serendipity TV. I'm delighted to be here with you this afternoon, and I want to go ahead and encourage you to tell me where you're watching from, because it's always lots and lots of fun for me to see where people are joining me from. And also, if you will, let me know if you can hear me and see me okay. We want to make sure that the technology is working just like it's supposed to. And one thing I have to tell you about now, y'all are going to be guinea pigs today. I have something that I'm going to try, and keep your fingers crossed that it works for us. So, really exciting stuff happening here. So, Susie, I'm glad to have you here with us. I see she's popped in, and I see lots of other people. Like I said, if you can see me and hear me okay, then please do either give me a thumbs up or a heart or something to let me know that everything is working right, because this is going to be super important today. Like I said just a minute ago, I have something I'm going to test out on you here in just a sec. So, all right, good deal, Susan and Terry and another Susan. We have two Susans here, so good deal. Everything is working well. Well, y'all, I am delighted, like I said a minute ago, to be here with you this afternoon. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to come over to the Serendipity Needleworks Facebook page for this week's episode of Serendipity TV. As you know, we're doing an encore tour of the thread venture from last summer over on the blog this summer, and it's still officially summer until next week. So I haven't put my shorts up yet. In fact, today is the first day that we've actually had some weather that's not just sweltering. But anyway, digress off onto that. I don't want to go down that road. But so anyway, what we're going to do is today we're going to take a peek at the stitch that I shared with you over on the Serendipity Needleworks website, and it is the mosaic stitch. And the mosaic stitch is a really good option for you for a variety of design components, but this week we're going to be talking about how you can use it on houses, on your needlepoint canvases. And you could use it on buildings too, not just limited to houses. So I've got a little special setup. I want to make sure I'm going to look and see if anybody has any questions, because remember, if you do have questions, please do type them in the comments box. And there's a little bit of a delay between when you type it in and hit enter and when I see it. So just know that, and know that if by some chance I happen to miss your question, then I will come back and answer it after we're finished with the broadcast, but I'll do my best to catch everything as we work our way through our time together here this afternoon. So, all right, so, Susan has got the best news. She says that she just learned today Birmingham is going to be getting a brick and mortar needlepoint store. Hallelujah, hallelujah. That means we only have an hour, at least I only have an hour to drive to get to a brick and mortar store. So Susan, I will be touching base with you soon about that one. That is terrific news. Okay, so let's see. So we've got lots of people joining us. Since we've got Maureen and Nan and Dana, so good deal. All right, so you, if you haven't had a chance to read this week's blog post, I suggest that you do that. It's at the top of the page. There's well, actually, let me just share that with you right now. Let's see if I can do that really quickly. So let's go there. All right. And let me get myself in the right place. There we go. So there is the picture of the French Quarter. And that's actually one of the balconies. Rebecca and I went on a little trip a couple of years ago, right before I closed the store. And this balcony was one that I saw that I just thought was super, super pretty. And it just screams New Orleans to me, particularly French Quarter. So what we did this week, and I'm just going to scroll slowly because I don't want to make you dizzy, but this week we talked about this particular stitch, the mosaic stitch, that you can use for different aspects of a house. So, for example, you can see on this picture, you can see this this fancy cornice work up here around the edge of the house. That would be one place that you could use the mosaic stitch on a needlepoint canvas. So for trim on a needlepoint canvas, on a house on a needlepoint canvas. That's one place that you could use it. You can also see that you could use it, and when you look at this diagram, you can see that you can use it for windows, window frames, door moldings, all kinds of things. You could use it for walls on a house to give some texture to the exterior wall of a house. So what I did when I did my stitch sample was I actually used Rainbow Persian, but I'm going to throw in a little something today for y'all. Let me get back over here to where I can get back on camera. So what I'm going to do today is share with y'all some tips on how to use a laying tool as well. So I'm not going to demonstrate this stitch with the Rainbow Persian. Instead, I'm going to demonstrate it with a stranded thread, and in this case DMC embroidery floss. And I'm going to show you how to use a laying tool, and I'm going to show you how to do the mosaic stitch. So keep your fingers crossed that everything works like it's supposed to, and I'm going to hop back over here and see if I can get all my stuff to show. Okay, so now I can see. And so first things first, let me grab this. Hang on, get out of this. This is a laying tool, and I've had a lot of people ask me, when you use a laying tool, you know, why do you use one? And the main reason you use a laying tool is to make sure that the strands of thread, when you're using multiple strands of thread in your needle, it's such that you can use this to make those strands lay smoothly on the surface of your canvas. You know, if you have 3 or 4 strands of thread threaded in your needle, when you go to make a stitch, they get twisted around each other. And when you're using a laying tool, you actually kind of control, well, you don't kind of, you do control the strands of thread with the laying tool in your non-dominant stitching hand. And when I say your non-dominant stitching hand, that's the one that you that's your other hand from your one that you hold the needle in. So if you're right-handed, then your dominant stitching hand is your right hand, your non-dominant is your left, and that's just the opposite if you're left-handed. So anytime I say your non-dominant hand, it's the one that you don't hold the needle in. It's the other hand. So anyway, I guess the best thing to do at this point, let me scroll back through here and see if I have any questions that anybody has asked. Okay. Oh, I see we've got Kim and Kimberly that have joined us too. Welcome. So glad to have you here. All right. So what I'm going to do, I need to turn on some lights real quick. So you're going to see that happen. And y'all, like I said, keep your fingers crossed that this works. Hang on one second. I'm going to step out of this frame and I'm going to disappear for just a sec. And now you're just going to hear me, and you're going to be able to see that, and I got to do a little bit of fancy maneuvering here so I can see what I'm showing you. So hang on one sec. Let me get all situated here. Now I'm going to ask, can you hear me okay? If you can hear me okay, give me a thumbs up, because that's something that I want to make sure is that the sound is good, okay? So, oh, Carol's with us here too. Hey, Carol. So if you can hear me okay, give me a thumbs up. And I'm hoping that you can. Okay, I see no thumbs up. Oh dear. Oh, there we go. Okay, good deal. Yay. Okay, so what you see here is I have my needle and thread secured in the canvas with a waist knot. And here is my laying tool. And I'll try to go slowly so that you can see what I'm doing, and so the camera has a chance to actually get focused. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring my needle, well, hang on one second. Got a little bit of a top-heavy thing. You know, it wouldn't be live video if it wasn't for the glitches. So hang on one second. Let me get rid of this too much weight on this cord so that this thing won't tip over again. Okay. So I think we're fixed now. Alrighty, I have my needle and thread secured with a waist knot here, and I'm going to come up on the surface of the canvas. Well, let's just see if I can get it lined up properly. Here we go. So I'm going to bring my needle and thread to the front, and I'm going to use the laying tool to hold the thread down on the surface of the canvas. And the reason I'm doing that, I'm using 4 strands of DMC cotton embroidery floss, and I'm stitching on 18 mesh canvas. So this should give me full coverage on the canvas. All right, I've got the laying tool on top of the thread to keep the thread. You can see how the strands of thread are laying side by side. Can you see that pretty well? Okay. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take a short tent stitch, because that is the first part of the mosaic stitch. Remember, it's a short tent stitch, and then there is a medium size it's an over 2 by 2 center longer stitch, and then that's followed by a short tent stitch. So you have a short stitch, a long stitch, a short stitch. All right, the second stitch, which is that middle stitch, is one canvas thread below where you started with that first stitch. So I'm going to bring that through to the front. I'm going to hold the thread down with my laying tool. I'm going to go over 1, 2, and up 1, 2. Take my needle through to the back. And now you can see I've got my laying tool in the thread, and I'm holding it this way. And if you can see closely, or look carefully, look closely, you can see how those strands of thread are laying side by side across the laying tool. And all I'm going to do is pull that snug and then slide that laying tool out of the threads. And you can see how my stitches are laying nice and smoothly, or my threads are laying nice and smoothly beside each other. And then I'm going to come up to finish that mosaic stitch, and then again I'm going to kind of flatten those out on the canvas, and I'm going to take my last short stitch to finish the mosaic stitch unit. Okay, and there you go. That's a mosaic stitch, and that's how you use a laying tool. So it's super easy to do. You can see that I have, well, maybe you can't see, I do have my canvas in on a stretcher bar frame, and it's on a tabletop stand. So when you're using a laying tool, you really do need to have both hands free. It's very, very hard to use a laying tool when you don't have both hands to stitch with. So, you know, that's why I say, yeah, when you're going to use a laying tool, you really, really do need to have a stand. I've tried doing it before, and where I'm holding it in my hand, or I'm holding the frame in my hand, and it's just, unless it's a small piece and you can get yourself kind of positioned in a weird contorted way in your chair and kind of prop things up on your knee, it's really, really hard, you know, to be able to use a laying tool without having your work in a stand. So I see we have a couple of questions. Carol says, amazing that it makes such a difference. It really and truly does. And I'll do a close-up picture of a stitch that's done with a laying tool. Well, actually, why don't I just do this? So I'll do another stitch, I'll skip over, and this time I won't use a laying tool. How about that? That way you can see the difference that it does make. So let me put my laying tool down and just stitch. And y'all forgive me if this is a little bit weird looking or slow, because I'm working around a camera stand and lights and all kinds of crazy stuff. So this is actually the stitch that's done without the laying tool, and I've got my threads are laying pretty nicely because I did have them stranded or stripped, whatever you want to call it, before I did my before I did this, and that's something that you need to make sure that you try to do too. Before you begin working with the stranded threads, you want to make sure that you strip or strand your threads, you pull them apart and then put them back together again. And the DMC cotton floss really, really does work very well and give you very nice coverage. You can see a little tiny bit of difference. I'm going to see if I can hold this up so you can see this just a little bit better. You can see a little bit of difference between those two. Not a huge amount. The biggest thing that I would say, and I'm going to put this back down now, so the biggest difference would be after I had stitched, say, two or three stitches, you would really begin to see a difference. So, well, I'll tell you what, I'll just go ahead and do that. I'll stitch a couple of more mosaic stitches without a laying tool, and then you'll be able to see a a little bit better what I'm talking about. So again, we have a short stitch followed by a medium size stitch that's worked over 2 canvas threads and up 2 canvas threads. And then we've got that last little short tent stitch. So you can now, on this one, you're beginning to be able to see how, you see how there's a little bit of a gap there. It's still not too terribly bad, but it really does make a difference over the course of your work. Something that you may want to take a peek at here on the Facebook page. I posted a picture earlier this week of the pumpkin canvas that I'm stitching, and I used a laying tool on that stranded silk, and it really does make a huge difference in the way that silk lays on the surface of my canvas. Now you can start to see how the threads are getting twisted on themselves. So that's why I really like to use a laying tool. Now Kim asked, what kind of laying tool are you using? She said it looks like one that she has that broke and she'd like to get another one. Okay, so I'll tell you what I'm going to do is I'm going to hop back over to the other position where I was. Let me turn this back around for my sake. I'm going to turn these lights off and get back in my chair and switch the camera back around. And hi there. Or wait, hi there. Okay, so now you can I was going to show y'all that laying tool. Here is the laying tool. This is a wooden laying tool. Laying tools come in a variety of different materials. This is a wooden one. They also make them in metal or stainless steel, and some are acrylic. So, antique ones you might even find are made out of bone. So, but this is a wooden one, and I really like wood because it's not cold and it's not hard on your hands. It's, holding something stainless steel can get to be a little hard on your hands, just like if you're I don't know if any of y'all are knitters, but if you knit and you use metal knitting needles as opposed to wood knitting needles, just the constant holding it in your hand, wood is just a little bit easier on your hands. That's one reason I love it. And then of course my husband's a forester, so I love wood things. So anyhow, this is it's just a lot of shops carry a variety of different kinds. So what I would recommend is that if if your local shop, if you do have a local shop, then check with them and see what kinds they have in stock, and ask if they would let you test drive one, because you may have a preference for a certain material over another. Some people like wood like I do. Some people like metal. There is a laying tool on the market called the BLT, which is a stainless steel really sharp laying tool. It's a really nice laying tool, and it's particularly good for using filament silk. And it's like I said, it's very sharp and almost lethal. So you have to be super careful when you use it. And that's another kind. Rainbow Gallery, which is whom we get a lot of the threads from that I use for the different projects that I do, they have a laying tool that is an acrylic laying tool, and then they have them that have and they have wooden ones. They also have wooden ones. So just check around. Kim, the short answer to the question is I will look and see. I have some of these in stock, so we'll touch base, and if you don't have a local shop that you can get one from, then we'll see about trying to get you one. So okay, so we say okay. Let me look at these questions and see if there are others. Oh, Judy says, is there a frame that you would recommend? So I like to use a stretcher bar frame for small pieces, and then scroll frames with the roller bars for larger pieces. And that's actually what I'm using for my pumpkin. I'm using the scroll frame with the roller bars, and then to hold that, on the piece that I was using just a few minutes ago, I have a tabletop stand that's from Needlework System 4. And then I also have what's called the Travel Mate from Needlework System 4 that I use for scroll frames. And then there's also a company called Case Creations, and they also make really nice stands for your frames. So either one of those, whichever one yeah, really whichever one you prefer or whichever one your local shop carries would be what I would suggest that you start with and try out. Most shops will let you try them out in the store so that you can see which one you like the best. If you don't have a local shop that you can test drive one on, then shoot me a text message or a special. Okay, let's try that again. Shoot me a private message here on Facebook or send me an email at ellen@serendipityneedleworks.com, and I'll be happy to give you some things to look for or some questions to ask yourself and to help you to make a decision about what kind of stand would be the best for your particular situation. So let's see, we've got another question. Oh, wait, and Kim says Rainbow Gallery makes a wooden one with a wrist ring. Yes, indeed they do, and that way you don't drop it. But when you let go of it, it just hangs off your wrist on that ring, and that's a really handy feature to have. You could also, I'm trying to think how this would work. My mother has one of those little stretchy rings that looks like a telephone cord that you can put over your wrist with your keys, and there may be a way to fix something like that too. I'm not sure. I'd have to kind of play around with that to see if I could figure out a way to do it. But anything you can do to make it easier to do your stitching so that you're not constantly dropping things or not constantly searching for things is always a helpful hint. So thanks, Dana, for sharing that. And Kim, you're very welcome. Dana says, do you roll your stitched canvas inside or out as you stitch on a roller frame? That's a really good question. And I like to stitch my canvas with it rolled on the outside so that as I roll, my work is on the top. I'm not stitching down in the well. And the reason I like to do that is because I find it fiddly to try and reach down in and and when I'm using a laying tool, to reach down in there and lay my thread smoothly on the surface of the canvas if I'm stitching down in the well. It is a little bit more cumbersome to tie your threads off sometimes on the back. So when I run into that situation, what I do is I'll bring my tail through to the front and just park it on top. And I like to use paper medical tape to tape those tails in place so that I'm not going to, they're not going to come loose and I'm not going to catch them on the back, and that keeps them from coming undone. So then I can flip over and sink a whole bunch of tails at once rather than having to stop, and when I'm really on a roll, having to stop and then sink that tail and and unroll my scroll frame and or unroll my scroll bars and all that stuff. So I hope that makes sense. And Phyllis has just joined us. So Phyllis, I'm glad to have you here. Judy, you're quite welcome. Happy to help. So does anybody have any other questions about using a laying tool or about mosaic stitch? I'm having a lot of fun sharing these stitches with y'all. Okay, so Dana says, in a roller frame, how do you protect your stitches as you roll and proceed down the canvas? That's a great question. So one thing that I always recommend that people do, if you have a canvas that you are doing some decorative stitches on that are crushable, in other words, if you're using silk ribbon, if you are using a lot of beads, I typically save those stitches for last, and the best way that I have found, so I go back and stitch those things after I've done all the rest of the work. And then if you do have a situation where, say you're doing a Christmas stocking, that's the one thing that I can think of that's a long piece that you might roll up and squish some of the stitches. What I like to do is take a light polyester fiber fill batting, a very thin polyester fiber fill batting, and I'll roll that up with my work so that my stitches are somewhat cushioned. I like to use the polyester because it's more lofty. The cotton is more, I would, 9 times out of 10 you're going to hear me say I prefer to work with natural fibers, but this is one of the exceptions because the polyester fiber fill that you use for quilting is very lofty, and so it's going to give you more squish, and you're not going to have things get crushed as easily. So that's how I handle that. If I have a piece that I'm working on that I'm going to have to do a lot of rolling up, because Yeah, because that's just because of the size of it. Another thing to keep in mind too, if you're working on a piece that scroll bars have, or scroll frames have different size sidebars that you can get, or at least the Case Creations ones do, and that's the kind that I like to use. You can get short sidebars, 7-inch. You can get longer sidebars, 10-inch, and I can't remember what some of the other sizes are. But if you have a piece where you've got a lot of work and you're doing a lot of stitches that are crushable, I guess, if that's a word, you want to have a longer sidebar so you have more of the surface of your canvas exposed at one time, so that your piece is not going to be rolled up for an extended period of time. And something else that you can do, and that I do recommend that you do if you're going to put your piece away for a while, unroll it so that it's not going to stay, if, like, say for example, if I were working on this pumpkin and I knew that I wasn't going to be able to pick it back up and work on it for 2 or 3 days, you can go in and unroll, like loosen up the bars and unroll it so that there's not any pressure on your work. That's another thing that you can do that will help, and that'll keep that'll help protect your stitches. So I hope that helps. I hope that gives you a little bit of an idea, or for some tips for things that you can do to keep your work from getting squished. Okay, so, Susie has a good question. So do you have guards to put over the exposed part of the canvas that's scrolled in order to keep dirt off and also not snag the piece? Usually I don't. I'm super careful with my stuff though. So if I take a scroll frame off of a stand, it's immediately, if it's something that I'm going to pick back up and work with pretty soon, it's going to go into, if I'm taking it off the stand, I'm going to put it in a white cotton pillowcase so that it's not going to be at risk of having anything happen to it. But those what do you call them? I'm sorry, the guards. Those are really a great idea, and they're super handy to have. I just happen to not have any, so I've never tried them. If you have used those and you do like them, I say keep on and keep on keeping on, and that's a good excuse for me to see if I can't find some and give them a try. I know that a lot of people do like to use those to protect their work, so that's a good helpful hint for other people who might not have ever heard of those. They fit over the part of your work that's rolled up so that it doesn't get dirty and so that your stitches don't get snagged. So it's almost like, I'm trying to think, I've seen them advertised. I can't remember what I've seen them advertised as, but it's almost like gloves for what's already stitched. It covers it up, so it protects it. And Susan says, do you tape canvas edges when using a scroll frame? Absolutely. I always tape the canvas edges, whether I'm using a scroll frame, stretcher bar frame, or just holding it in hand. I always tape the edges, because if you don't, you're risking the thread snagging on the edges of the canvas, or unfortunately, like I've done, snagging a blouse or some article of clothing on the canvas, because the canvas edges that are cut are kind of sharp. They're definitely rough, and I've snagged blouses on those before, and that's a real bummer. So, okay, so Terry says she's seen those on Etsy, so that's great. That's great to know. Thanks for sharing that. So we will see if we can't find some resources to share with you all here on the Facebook page, where you can find those little guards for your scroll bar frames, and I will see what I can come up with for y'all about laying tool resources. And this is just great. I appreciate you all joining me so much this afternoon. If you are a member of the Stitchers Club, remember we're going to be popping over inside the Stitchers Club. Well, no, wait, back up. The Summer Thread Venture Passenger Thread. Okay, here we go. Try again. Rewind. We're going to be meeting at 4 o'clock Central Time inside the Summer Thread Venture Travel Lounge, which is the Facebook group for the Summer Thread Venture. So I'll see y'all there at 4 o'clock. Before I go, I want to make sure that I do let you know about a special project I posted. I think it was either here or inside the Serendipity Needleworks Facebook group. If you're not a member of the free Serendipity Needleworks Facebook group, please do request to join that. It's free and we have a great time over there. Somewhere along the way, I posted a link to an article that was in the Charleston, South Carolina newspaper about a project that Madonna, who owns Cabbage Row Needlepoint, is doing. And she's doing that. It's a project where people stitch hearts, and all it is just an outline of a heart on a piece of canvas, and people are stitching those. You can request one from her, and I don't know that she has any kits available right now, so that's where I'm going with this, so hang tight. What she's done is she is soliciting people to stitch these hearts, and then when they finish stitching the canvas, they send it back to her with a check for $40, and those are being finished into ornaments that are being distributed to people, to families of people who are hospice patients in their local inpatient hospice facility. So I've had people that have asked me about doing the same thing, about participating in that project. I haven't talked with Madonna about that specifically, but here in Tuscaloosa, we have an inpatient hospice facility too. In fact, my dad was a patient there, and he died, it'll be 10 years ago, October the 9th. So I thought, well, I'm going to talk to her about this and make sure she's okay with it. But in the meantime, because I have a heart that I was going to stitch, that I am going to stitch and send to her, I thought, well, you know, there's no reason why we can't do that ourselves and just spread the love, just share the love, and make, as if you saw today's email, this is one way that we can make the world a better place, one stitch at a time. I know it would have meant the world to me to have something that somebody had stitched specifically for a patient at a hospice facility, and then for their family to have after their family member passed. So I think that that's such a wonderful, beautiful thing for her to do, that I would like to pick up the torch and keep going with it. And while she can do that for people in South Carolina, you know, we can all pick up and do that, you know, all over the place. But I'm going to go ahead and put things in motion to start the same type of a program here, so that you can, you know, what I'll do is I'll provide the canvas and the instructions, which are really just you stitch it however you want to, and then you send it back to me. And I don't know what finishing prices will be, so I don't have any idea yet at this point. I'll have to check with my finisher to find out, you know, what we can do as far as that goes. But we'll definitely start that project. Madonna calls it Hearts for Hospice. You know, like I said, we'll get all the details worked out, but just know, for those of you who have expressed an interest in participating in that project, know that if she's in a place where she doesn't have any hearts available, I will have some hearts available, whether I run them through her, send them to her, or whether we do it, you know, like I said, this is just in the very beginning stages of getting off the ground. So, you know, just wanted to put that out there because there has been interest in it. So that is going to be the last thing that I have to share with you today. So if you're interested in doing that, then, you know, I don't know, type in the comments box, you know, I'm interested, or something like that, just to let me know, or send me a private message, and, you know, I'll make sure that you get the details on how that's all going to play out. But I think that it's a really worthwhile project, and it's something that is near and dear to my heart because my daddy was in hospice, and like I said, and that's coming up on the 10-year anniversary for that. So I can't think of a better time to institute something like that than now. So I hope that you have a wonderful rest of your day. And if you do have any questions, of course, think of something later, pop back in and type them in the comments box. Send me an email at ellen@serendipityneedleworks.com. If you know somebody that you think might enjoy participating in our weekly live cast, or get the emails, the weekly emails I send out, or participate in this hospice project, then share this with them and let them know about it too, because the more the merrier. It's always more fun when we have more people participating in all of our fun stitching activities. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and thank you once again for taking the time out of your schedule to join me here today. I will plan on seeing you next week, same time, same place, and until then, happy stitching.